Live. Welcome back, everyone, to our third and final broadcast today. I'm Chef AJ, and today I have a very special guest who's going to be talking about how to deal with the stress of the pandemic. We had Dr. Lyle earlier talking about the anxiety, and now we need to know what to do about the stress. So before we get started, I just want to let you know that these sessions, our guests come on for free and they do their best to answer your questions when appropriate, but everyone has a different style. And someone like Dr. Lyle tends to like to take very thoughtful, long answers. And so we weren't able to get to any questions. And I did mention at the beginning that this might happen. So every speaker is going to be different. Some really like to go quickly through questions and some really just want to give content. So realize that these are not Q&As. These are informational sessions that are brought to you for free. So please do not get upset if your question doesn't get answered, because there's just no guarantee. All the speakers pretty much do private consults and have books if you need to talk to them privately. You have to also understand that when you see a certain number of people watching, you're seeing it the way you're watching. So you might say, well, but gosh, there's only 100 people on. Why can't you get to my question? Well, this is going to 5 different places. It's not only going to my YouTube page, but it's going to my professional Facebook page and 3 other groups that have thousands of people in it. So we've got lots of people watching, and that means lots of questions are going very quickly. And if you post early, it goes away because you only can see a certain amount at a time. So again, please enjoy these sessions. You can always listen to them afterwards. And again, I will do my best to answer your questions, but there's just no guarantee that I can get to every single question every single time. So if you have a burning question that you have for a particular speaker, maybe email me through the mailing list when the emails go out about who the speaker is, and I'll try to give it priority. But that's the way it is. So also a lot of you come on late, which is fine. And you want to know who the speaker is. So it's in the description box. So that's where it is. All right. So I will welcome my guest today. I've known him for over 10 years. We've been friends. We've been working together for, I think, at least 6 now. He is my partner in the Ultimate Weight Loss Program. He is internationally known as a nutritional expert and fitness guru, and he's the trainer to the stars. He's written 2 amazing books. One is called The Pillars to Health, and one is called Strong, Savvy, and Safe. And you have all those links in the show notes. Please welcome all the way from Colorado, John Pierre. How you doing?
Very good. Thank you. I first of all have to thank you for doing these amazing shows. I mean, 2 or 3 a day. I mean, it's got to be so taxing. And
yeah. It's fun though. And I know it won't be forever. It's just, I really want people to not watch the news like me. And I figure I'll give them an alternative, because the news doesn't change, it just seems to get worse. And that's one of the things Dr. Lyle talked about in the anxiety talk, is that the news always gives you the worst case scenario. So what I'm trying to do is bring people the best case scenario.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. So what have you been up to? Because I imagine you're still sheltering in Colorado.
Yeah, been quarantined for, 2 months. And, when this first started, I immediately jumped into action and started helping people that were in need. So the elderly that couldn't go shopping, I immediately got in touch with people who I knew were in wheelchairs or handicapped and tried to help out. And then our organization, Living with Harmony, we've been sending out masks and gloves and equipment to doctors that didn't have any for whatever we had. Because, since we are involved in veterinary medicine, and we had a bunch of stuff, so we wanted to get it to people who needed it right away. And then just care packages to people who lost their jobs and needed a little pickup. So that's mainly what I've been doing, and still working with clients one-on-one, and, doing different podcasts and shows.
Is your phone ringing off the hook now with people wanting to talk to you personally because of the stress of what's going on?
Yeah, it's been, a lot of texts, a lot of emails, a lot of calls, a lot of people very concerned, and understandably so. I mean, this is an unprecedented time in history, but especially for our history, our age group. I mean, we've never seen, sheltering in place and quarantine. We've never seen that before. So it's very scary. And as we talked about earlier, it's very taxing on people emotionally and psychologically. And for people who've already had some trauma in their life and maybe already had OCD, or they already had some hyper anxiety and they were just hyper vigilant, this just makes it even worse.
I can imagine that. Devin says, John Pierre is the person I want to meet one day. So hopefully you will, and maybe we'll be getting back to conferences and things like that. Yeah, we both grew. I was born in the 60s. I know you're younger than me, maybe not. We always talk about the Flintstones and Jetsons and Scooby-Doo's. I don't remember the world ever being quite like this.
Right. We always heard about the Cold War, we've heard about depression, but we've never experienced anything. Most of us, our biggest trauma, in something like this was our water going off for a day or two, or the power going off. But, to be inside at home and quarantined, and people losing their jobs, people worrying about paying a mortgage, taking care of their kids. And for all the poor parents now who have to be at home with the kids, as much as they want to do it, is very taxing to them because they're not used to it. And a lot of times, a lot of my clients, they have to sit with their children online and sit with them for hours to do their homework and do their schoolwork. So it's kind of throwing people out of their normal routine. And one of the main things that I teach people is it's very important in life to have a routine, because it helps bring this sense of calmness and security. And, during this type of crisis, two things we really need is connection. So social, distancing should never mean social isolation, for one. And the other thing is we want to feel secure. And so it's very important for everyone to understand is just because you can't necessarily be with your friends physically, you should still be texting more. You should be doing more phone calls, more emails, FaceTime, any of that stuff you should be doing. And the most important thing is check on people who really need your help. And that would definitely be the elderly, because the elderly are very scared. And many of the elderly who normally had people in retirement homes and senior centers and adult daycare centers coming in to visit them and have that social interaction, that was literally their lifeline to staying alive. And now many of those places have shut and closed that down. So they're very, very lonely and they feel very isolated. And there's some interesting articles in the Journal of Psychology, and you'll see more and more studies done on when seniors feel isolated, how their immune system gets compromised, their depression level goes up, and they just do a downward spiral. So it's so important that we all support one another, but especially if you know anyone who has a mental illness or anyone who is elderly, they need extra attention.
That is so interesting that you say that, because that's the exact reason I started doing these broadcasts. Is I was thinking, how can I reach out to the most people? And first what I was doing is I put Words with Friends on my phone to play with my friends that were seniors alone. And that's like totally addictive, let me tell you. So I don't know if that was a good idea. And then I thought, excuse me, this would be a good way to reach out. And after today, the third broadcast, I have one more Zoom session. I have a meetup group here called Healthy Living with Chef AJ, where we haven't met in 3 months in person. We would meet at the library every month for a vegan potluck. And we're going to do a Zoom call with everybody. And, everybody can have, there is a level of Zoom that's absolutely free. I think you can only go as long as 45 minutes. When you go longer, you have to pay more. And when you have more people on, you have to pay more. But like you say, everybody could be doing Zoom with everybody that they wanted to. So I think that's really good advice.
Not only, they literally almost like have to. It's so important, because what's going to happen is you don't feel it, but subconsciously and subliminally, you're losing connection to all your lifelines in life. And so just because we can't physically touch or see people, we have to overcompensate now with calls. As soon as this happened, I immediately start texting. Literally for hours, I'd be texting everyone and checking in, making calls and emails. And the other things that I've done, which I know a lot of people might not want to do, but I think it's important, is to literally send letters via snail mail. So we've sent letters, and then also care packages, which is really important, because there's a lot of people who are feeling very scared and they've lost, their jobs and their incomes, and just sending them a few little things to let them know you're thinking about them, and everything, is going to be okay eventually. Because, we've seen hard times in life before, and our world has gone through pandemics, and our society has always survived and overcome. So you don't want to just focus on the pandemic. And it's one of the things, I'm doing this Zoom series actually next Saturday, a 5-part series, and it's basically dealing with the pandemic and dealing with stress and how to be prepared. And one of the main things that I'm talking about, and you just alluded to earlier, is that we have to make sure that we take a media fast. We have to stay away from the media, because it's so negative, and people are watching CNN or Fox or whatever the news stations are almost 24 hours a day. They're just leaving the TV on. And it's just that negative news is morphing into them and just creating so much fear and pandemonium. It's not healthy at all.
Well, I agree. I've never watched the news, and I certainly don't intend to start now. I figure if something's important, somebody's going to knock on my door. And I think for my mental health, it just takes you down a very, very dark hole. So we have a question. Where did it go already? From Monica. How do you combat feelings of loneliness?
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying is you want to connect with people. So you immediately call people, you text, you FaceTime, you write letters, you Zoom, you get back into the whole art of living. As human beings, we're designed to be social creatures. We're not designed to live in a cave in front of a fire by ourselves. We're supposed to live in tribes. We're supposed to be together. Touch and connection with one another is an important part of life. My background's in geriatrics. So over 25 years ago, I created the first brain building programs in the United States using a plant-based diet. But one of the things that I learned when I first started is back then we were using VHS. So I'd be showing video clips on the body in VHS. And I'm not really tech savvy. So I would get there an hour early just to set up the machine. And seniors would already be there waiting for me. And I learned right away that these poor people are so lonely. So I start going to the retirement homes half hour, 45 minutes, an hour before all my lectures just to be with them. And I would make sure that I would touch their leg or touch their shoulder and just connect with them eye to eye. So the best way to combat loneliness is to engage with people, for sure. The other thing that you should be doing is making sure that if you have pets, you have animals, you need to connect with them because they can feel your fear, they feel your anxiety, and it causes them trauma too. So it's important, and it's a very symbiotic relationship when you're holding your dog or your cat or whatever you have as a pet. You're giving them love, but you're also feeling a sense of connection too.
I don't know what people without pets do. I really don't. That would be so hard. I tell you, we have the coolest thing. See, I know things are not great, but I choose not to focus on it because when I say there's nothing I can do about it, I'm doing something by this, but I can't go help. I used to volunteer at the hospital. I'm not allowed anywhere. Right. And so I try to just focus on the good things. And so a few days ago, a hummingbird built a nest in a wind chime on my patio. And that's like the biggest joy to me is just making sure that, she's there every day. Like when I go to bed at 10 o'clock, if she's not there, I'm up all night worrying, like, I named her Mimi, when is she going to come home? But it's just giving me so much joy just to know that as bad as things are, life goes on. Life is going to go on. And I think about this movie. I know you don't really go to movies much, but there was a movie a long time ago called Life is Beautiful. Then Roberto Benigni won an Oscar for it, and he was in the concentration camp, but it was a comedy. I know that sounds disrespectful, but the idea is he made life beautiful for his son, even in a concentration camp. And that's kind of what I feel is like we have to look for opportunities to create joy and peace and meaning right now, because we can't change the government right this second. We can't change what the virus is going to do, but we can change our response to it. And we can either be putting good out in the world or maybe not so good, right?
Exactly. That's excellent advice. You're right. For sure. We can't change the virus unless you're into virology and you're working for a cure or something. We can only change the way we respond. And the thing that we need, as I said in the beginning, is we're social creatures. We need to connect with one another, and we also need to feel safe. And if loneliness is not safe, loneliness is very scary. And from a physiological standpoint, it really impairs the immune system because your immune system will take a hit more and more as depression sets in and you feel lonely. It's taking a hit. And many of us aren't getting the same food. We're not getting outside in the sunshine. We're not grounding ourselves. We're not getting fresh air. And that's already taken another hit on the immune system. So we need to be extra conscientious. Now, it's kind of like AJ, when you used to go on vacations, I would always say, you got to up the ante a little bit. When you go out of town, you can't lower your standards. You have to raise your standards. And it's the same thing here. We can't lower our standards and go eating ding dongs and donuts and candies and soda pop, to try to fill some sort of void. Now's the time we should be making sprouts, growing microgreens, getting out in the garden, making sure we have big fresh salads every day, making sure we're eating fresh whole foods. It's critical. And remember to hydrate. It's very important to keep hydrated.
Absolutely. Elspeth, who was on the broadcast earlier doing a wonderful cooking demo that I hope you all will check out and get those delicious recipes. She says, building community, love Zoom. I'm thinking, now I know what to call you guys. You're my Zoomunity. When you talked about not lowering the standards, we see this all the time with the people in the Ultimate Weight Loss Program, where they lose the weight and then they get a little bit cocky. And the best thing you ever taught me was to raise, not only raise my standards, but just up my game when I'm in places like the cruise, or that's not when you want to let down your guard. Is when things are more challenging. That's when you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is, this type of disaster that's really occurring, this pandemic, it will kind of let you see a little bit of who you are. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, but it's like anything else. Like I've said a million times, if you squeeze a lemon, what comes out is lemon juice, because that's what's in it. So when you're stressed and and anger comes out, well, understand that's who you are. And if you don't like that, try to be more compassionate, work on being more loving and kind, if you don't like what's coming out. But I think you're right. Raising your standards is always important, because society is basically designed to lower your standards. It's designed to break you down. So you have to be working constantly until you get to a certain level where you're a beacon of light and love. And that's just who you are. It's like the orange has orange juice inside of it. It can't change that. That's who it is.
Oh, wow. Well, you definitely are a beacon of light of love. I'm more like a match. Heidi says, I have his book, The Pillars of Health. At 73, I do the exercises to remember his boot camp in Atlanta. Tracy says, what a kind, sweet man. So you've got a lot of fans here. Colleen says, I haven't worked since lockdown, but I'm getting so much done around my house. It feels freeing. These are things I wanted to get done in a long time that created stress. And that's another way to phrase it. If we can't do anything about it right now, the worst thing we can do is to eat a bunch of crappy food. And we're seeing this on the Ultimate Weight Loss page, that there's two kinds of people. There's the kind of people like Colleen, they're saying, oh, wow, I got some time. This would be a good time to take Elspeth's cooking course or clean out my environment. And other people are like, oh, I'm so stressed, I'm just going to eat a lot of junk.
Yeah, I mean, when so many people say to me, JP, I work so much, I don't have time to clean my house. I don't have time to exercise. I don't have time to do this. Well, now most of us have time. So now it's good to take your energy, take your spoons or your battery packs and direct it toward getting those things done. Because once the pandemic is over and things clear up, wouldn't it be nice to have a clean house? Wouldn't it be nice to have all these things organized and all these things done? Wouldn't it be nice to be fit and healthier, lower cholesterol, lower blood sugar, open up your blood vessels so blood pressure is normal? Wouldn't that be great when all this ends, that we can have that? Well, now's the time we can work on it.
Yeah, because people that are using this as an excuse to go off plan and relapse and eat junk, one day this will end and you're not going to be happy when you're 10, 15, 50 pounds heavier. I promise you.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. I try my very best, and I'm so grateful for what you're doing, but I'm trying my best to get out there and do these programs online so people have some support. Because let's face it, there is a certain level when you get depressed enough and lonely enough that you almost feel that there's no hope. And we don't ever want you to get to that point. So it's so important to stay engaged in life. Very important.
So people are saying, oh, it's too cold, I can't get out and walk, but you can exercise at home.
Well, the other thing is to rephrase it. Instead of people saying, I have to exercise, I think it would be great to say, I can exercise. I have clients that have one leg. I have clients that are in a wheelchair, that they would take every bit of money in their bank account if they could just walk 10 steps. So it helps if you start rephrasing things and realizing that we have this magnificent body and you don't get it forever. As you get older, it's like anything else. If you ever had a pair of I think you've had, AG, like your Scooby-Doo shorts when you were heavier, after time, that elastic wears out and it doesn't stretch and snap back. And it's like the human body. Eventually the human body, starts deteriorating. So be so grateful for what you have, that you have the ability to ambulate and walk. You have the ability to raise your arms over your head. We need to just reframe things and be grateful and have a sense of gratitude.
People that are saying that the reason that they couldn't do well is because they didn't have time to exercise, and they're still not exercising. We know that then that was an excuse. And it's the same thing for eating healthy, because obviously there's people that are on the front lines that don't have this time, but so many of us have been gifted this tremendous gift of some quiet time. And you do have the time now. And even before, you did have the time, because everybody has the same 168 hours of the week. It's just that you choose what to do with your time, just like you do with your money. And I mean, what could be a better time to learn healthy habits, especially since we know that people that are less healthy are more at risk.
Absolutely. And the thing is, you can think of how can you sneak it in? Like right now I'm sitting on an exercise ball. So I'm sitting on this ball, which is an unstable surface. So when you sit on it, your nervous system is like the 4th of July. It's firing like crazy because it's trying to keep you from falling down. So just by sitting on a ball, just changing from a chair to an exercise ball, you've already turned your nervous system on. When most people have sensory motor amnesia where their nervous system goes to sleep, just do one thing like that. What if you get a set of exercise bands and every time you're watching TV, you're just sneaking in some very basic movements and just simple things. Like a lot of people tell me they can't do push-ups. And I'll say, okay, well, how about if we take an exercise band, put it behind our back, and now we do a push-up standing or sitting. It's just not the same load as if you were using your body weight, but eventually I keep getting a thicker band, and eventually I'm strong enough to do them off a counter, and then I'm strong enough to do them off a chair, and then eventually I'm strong enough to do them off the floor. So you just start sneaking movement in. And one of the things that I did is I created some new exercise videos, and they're on healthyhumanrevolution.com. And there's one on exercise bands. There's one, which is the one I've taught forever, which is coordination and skill. And it's one that I've used in all my classes. And that's one to help your nervous system and balance. But the one that most people are underestimating is the jumping rope video. Now, people get scared because oh my gosh, I can't do a jumping rope video. Well, here's what I did. I took a jump rope and like David Copperfield, I did a magic trick. I cut it in half. So now every single person in the world that is really able to stand can jump rope because once I'm moving the rope, I'm just showing you in these videos different footwork patterns. And every time you're bouncing just a little bit, you're building bone density. And that's one of the things we need the most is bone density because osteopenia, the rates of osteopenia are through the roof. And how many people have the osteopenia, the beginning stage of osteoporosis that don't even know it? Because osteoporosis is a silent disease. And when we use things like a medicine ball, if you would just get a medicine ball and every day you're just throwing it at your wife or your husband or your brother or sister, every time that ball hits your hand, it's developing a bone density in your hands. It's like walking on your hands, and jumping rope or walking or running is developing bone density in the lower body and the spine. And these are very simple things. We don't need to go to a gym. You don't need to spend hours and hours doing these things. You just sneak them in throughout your day.
Great. And Crystal posted the link to your exercise videos, and I've been posting the link to the Zoom calls that you have coming up. And Kelly says that she's a mom working from home, managing 9-year-old, schooling at home. It's a lot, but I have some key routine and anchors that are really helping. Routines are huge. And Crystal is saying morning and evening routines are the best. I think, it's funny. I was talking to a friend today who was telling me about her 4-year-old granddaughter who every morning says to her mother, Mommy, I need a schedule. I need to know what we're going to do today. And I think it's really good to have a schedule and a routine, especially people that are, wanting to lose weight and build healthy habits. And even though you don't have the same one you had before, you certainly can create a new routine now.
You're right. And who needs schedules the most are children, because without these boundaries and direction, they're kind of just like gremlins going crazy, and it's not healthy for them. There's been some studies in psychology that show when children have these boundaries and they have a schedule and a routine, they have less impulse disorders. They have less erratic behavior. So now that the kids are home, it's critical for parents to make sure the kids have some sort of structure and routine. And when I did my conference last year in Chicago, one of the things we focused on, one whole lecture was just on a morning routine, and another lecture was on an evening routine. And it's very important that you get these routines in because they give you a sense, as I said earlier, we need connection with people, but we also need to feel safe. And routines help you feel safe and confident.
Absolutely. Shada is watching and says, being in quarantine is the best time to lose weight and start exercising. You are so right. Shada is going to be a future guest on the show doing a wonderful cooking demo in the next week or so. So Judy has a question. Is yoga good for bone density?
Well, yoga is probably one of the best things that you can do. It's a complicated question because yoga in our society here in America, I've taught in India, and they kind of laugh at when we do yoga. I mean, not really laugh, but they kind of just raise their eyebrow because we don't really practice yoga here. What we practice is postures. And the postures were originally created in yoga so you could sit for longer times to do meditation. So most yoga it helps with flexibility, and it can help with, if they teach it properly, breathing and focus. But in terms of bone density, it's not really the best way to develop bone density. The best way to develop bone density is through impact. So when we look at professional tennis players who hit a ball 6 to 8 hours a day, the ulna and radius, the bones here in the forearm, are thicker than the non-dominant hand because they're constantly being stressed when the ball hits the racket. It's stress. And when you look at their non-dominant hand, those bones haven't grown as much. So we know that impact develops the bones, but also so does resistance. So when I'm doing a push-up or I'm doing a curl or a military press, that weight that's tugging and pushing on the bones and the muscle, the bone responds. It says, hey, they made me do 10 push-ups today. What if I have to do 11 tomorrow? My bones aren't going to hold strong, so I better get stronger. So, you have these osteoblasts and these osteoclasts, these different bone cells that work in harmony to eat away old bone and to build new bone. So exercise is one of the things that helps stimulate that. So although yoga is a beautiful part of your program, it's not necessarily the best for bone building.
Nice. Let's see. I had a comment from somebody. Summerfest did get canceled. Is that correct, JP?
Well, I haven't heard, but as far as I know, almost everything's got canceled. Everything that I know of has been canceled because I just don't think most people want to travel.
Yeah, and even both of our conferences got canceled. Now, where was this? John says, I appreciate his positive message. We do not need to live in fear. We love John and miss the Summerfest nevertheless. Some vegans are encouraging people to ignore physical distancing, like Will Tuttle. This concerns me. Can there be a balance?
Well, we've been in quarantine here 2 months, and Teresa Passy lives just very, 100 yards from here. So I've seen her every day for 2 months, but we both have been quarantined. So although I still see her when we go for walks, we still wear masks when we go outside. But when I see her, I don't, because I've seen her since before this began. So I'm not so sure why. I haven't heard that news really. I don't know enough about that people are saying not to socially distance. I'm not sure. I'm not sure right now from what all the experts are saying, we still need to practice social distancing unless the people are in our home. I know when I go out to the store about every 2 weeks. At first I was going all the time to shop for the elderly and people in need, but now I go about every 2 weeks and I literally just go into the store, get the greens and vegetables, and I'm out. And I get there right when it opens and I leave about 5 minutes later. So I don't linger in there. So I don't know if it's necessarily a good idea not to social distance. I think you're better off being safe than sorry.
Yep. Stephanie asks, would it be advantageous to have kettlebells, weights in your living room and do 1 to 2 minute exercises throughout the day? Or do you really need a good 20 to 30 minute session?
Well, it all depends on your goal. But from a health standpoint and building bone density and muscle, no, sneaking it in throughout the day is perfect. Absolutely. For most of my clients that I work with that are busy, unless they're exercise fanatics, I just have them sneak movement in throughout the day. And the exercise videos, what I did is I didn't teach a class. Like, it's not a class, it's actually a how-to. So the exercise video on bands is showing you all the exercises to sneak in throughout the day. The balance and coordination skill, 20, 30 different exercises, you can sneak them in when you want. Same thing with the jumping rope. If you just get a jump rope anywhere, the dollar store, you have one already, just cut the jump rope, right? And if you cut it, I can still jump rope. I don't know if you guys can see me okay. I can still do the same thing as I was jumping with a regular rope. There's no difference. Your body doesn't know the difference that this is connected. It's like your body doesn't know if you're lifting metal weights or if you're lifting 50 gallons of water. It just knows resistance. When you're jumping rope, your body doesn't know that there's no attachment here. It just knows its feet are having to fire really quick and you're developing coordination. So sneaking in movements throughout the day, in my opinion, is far better than somebody exercising for an hour in the morning and then 23 hours of sedentary living. And AJ, we did that at your house. We set up exercise bands on your refrigerator. We put exercise balls and weights on the couch. So if you watch Jeopardy, you can sneak some movement in. And I know that you ride your bike when you're watching Jeopardy or whatever it is you're doing.
When I do it, I actually, you're right. Like, I'll spin for an hour, and I'm guilty of that 1 hour and 23 off, but I do use that time. That's how I was able to get myself to really do something every day, was to use that I forget the word in psychology, where I put something I like more on top of it, which is like watching a fun show on Netflix, and it made it a lot easier to work out.
Yeah. I tell a lot of my clients, look, if you have a favorite show, then, try to do some movement with that show, right? So like, I think you've heard me say this a million times. I had a client that I gave exercise bands to that was, walking with a cane and couldn't walk very well. And I said, I only want you to do the band exercises when the commercials are on TV. That's it. And she said, that's all you want me to do? And I said, yeah. 3 days later, she called me and she said, do you know how many commercials are on TV? Because she realized that every time you're watching a show, there's like 15 minutes of commercials. You know what I mean? So that if you watch 3 or 4 shows, that's 45 minutes to an hour of exercise you could sneak in. So there's always ways to sneak it in. So to answer your question about kettlebells and things, unless you're going into a competition or you're trying to build endurance or really overexcite your nervous system, sneaking it in is completely fine for health and bone density.
Oh, that's great. So one of the things that we talk a lot about in the Ultimate Weight Loss Program and privately to our clients is the scale. And you hate it even more than me. I don't like it. I'm a little bit more flexible than you. Like, I don't tell people that they should never weigh themselves, but we've got all these people that are scale monkeys that are literally weighing themselves, not just every day, but multiple times a day. And I don't think that's helpful.
Well, no, it's actually detrimental to people who have, kind of some psychological issues. That you have to understand that when you step on the scale, it's just measuring your gravitational force, your pull. It's not telling you anything. It's just saying you weigh 140 pounds. But my question is 140 pounds of what? Because if you start working with me, I guarantee 100% of the people I work with are going to gain weight. 2 ways they're going to gain weight. They're going to eat more carbohydrates, which I want them to do, more starches. So they're going to retain a little bit more water in their muscles and liver. And they're going to be building more muscle and hopefully bone. So if they go on the scale, it should be going up. So it's really, scales are for fish. Human beings don't need to have scales. I mean, you've heard the story with Shada. Shada was in a boot when I started training her, and I took her scale and hid it behind that couch so she couldn't get it. And when she moved, the movers came in and said, why is there a scale behind your couch? Because I didn't want her to be measuring her self-worth on a number that wasn't accurate anyhow. And also we work a lot with people who have eating disorders, and they have compulsiveness, and they always want to measure and weigh things. And this is a way for me, in a gentle and kind way, to get one of those modalities out of their life, that they can't weigh themselves anymore. Yeah. And if somebody forces me and says, I want to use the scale, I'll say, great. Then you have to weigh yourself 6 to 8 times a day, because you're going to see your weight fluctuating all the time. How do you think these high protein diets work at first? You're eliminating all your carbohydrates. So that means the water that's stored in the muscle and the liver is being used up. So you step on the scale and you go, yay, I lost 3 pounds this weekend. Sorry, you can't lose 3 pounds in a weekend of body fat. You'd have to be on a treadmill 24 hours. I mean, even people who run marathons, they're not losing that much body fat. So I don't find the scales to be helpful. In all the years I've taught, I don't recommend the scales to anyone.
Yep. I don't recommend the food scales that you weigh your food on, or the bathroom scales that you weigh yourself on. There's only 3 species that have ever been overweight: humans, domesticated dogs, and domesticated cats. All the other species in the world do fine without ever weighing themselves and without ever weighing or measuring their food, or looking in the mirror for that matter.
Well, and AJ, even though the program that you and I do is called Ultimate Weight Loss, you always know what I always wanted to call it.
The Love and Compassion Program.
Yeah, because it's like I don't want people. I have people coming in my office when I was in Chicago that'd be 350 or 400 pounds, and they would sit down, and I would say, so what is it that you want to work on? And they would literally say, what do you mean? I'm 350 pounds. I'd be like, oh, okay, well, I don't judge on that. I don't judge people that are overweight. I mean, there's a lot of people that are overweight that are healthier than people who are stick thin. If losing weight was the secret to being happy and healthy, we could just emulate anorexics, right? Because they're as thin as can be. So it's like losing weight is one of the byproducts of healthy living. Lowering your blood pressure is one, having healthy levels of blood lipids, blood sugars, your muscle density. I mean, one of the most important biomarkers of aging is balance. How well can you balance on one leg? How well can you go into a dog position on the ground and get up? That's an important biomarker of how well you're aging. And so I don't focus on weight loss. It's a byproduct that will happen eventually. And the only way I know how much my clients weigh is because when they first come to me, they know what they weigh. And then oftentimes a year later, they'll go to get a physical and the doctor will say, you've lost 150 pounds. I was like, okay, great. But did he tell you your blood pressure dropped and your cholesterol and blood sugars and all that? So that's what I'm concerned with, more of those markers.
Yep. Agreed. John says, what is your opinion on rebounding? My old friend Tom Tate got me into it.
Oh man, Tom Tate, what a great guy. Of course, I've known Tom.
Oh,
Rebound,
I know that. I know him too, right? He's an older gentleman now, right?
yeah, Tom Tate is an amazing guy. I actually had he wanted me to do a consult with him in Florida, and I literally got rid of all his furniture in his house, and he was in his 70s. So he was sitting on the ground and he was sitting on exercise balls and cushions. But rebounding is probably the healthiest thing that you can do for your lymphatic system, which is your immune system. So at this time, when everybody's confined inside, if you have a rebounder, great time to use it. Make sure if it doesn't have handles, a good idea is to put it in the corner so you can put your hands on the wall. Because remember, you're bouncing up and down or walking up and down. You're not used to that, and it's unstable. You could fall. But rebounding is phenomenal. Excellent. And who is that? John who?
John Mutter.
Oh, okay. Yes, I know the name.
You know, Heidi says, what is an exercise to help get up from the floor?
To help get up off. Oh, okay. Well, actually, that's a very great question, because that, as I said earlier, is a biomarker of aging. And it has to do with a couple different things. It has to do with your mobility and flexibility, and also your strength. So I wouldn't try necessarily working on it right now, but what I would do is go to your couch and remove the cushion and put maybe a little pad there, a yoga pad, and start getting up and down off the couch on a daily basis, because now you're going to go deeper. So your flexibility, your mobility is going to increase, and your strength is going to increase. And as we do that week after week, month after month, we have the ability to squat down lower. That's what ultimately will help you get off the floor. And then eventually what you'll do is you'll be able to go just get down on the floor and then use something to help you get up. And eventually, as those muscles get stronger and you get better flexibility, you'll get there. But, you know, a lot of people in our society, in our world in general, they sleep on the floor. So they're getting up and down off the floor. They eat on the floor. You know, it's this, what we call an Indonesian squat. And it's not because they're Asian that they can do it. It's because they don't have furniture. So they got better at it. Well, they were raised that way, but we would get better at it because we practice it.
I so agree, because, you know, I used to work at retirement homes before I became a chef, and these people could not get, and it's not even because they were overweight or necessarily, they just didn't have they weren't able to get up off a chair, off a toilet. And my brother-in-law used to be a fire captain, and he said the number one call wasn't for fires, it was getting people off the toilet.
Yeah. You know, they actually have chairs at retirement homes where the chair actually comes up. You push a button and then you lean into it and it brings you down. And so what I would see with a chair, I'll show you. Let me get a chair.
I agree with you. They even have toilets now where the toilet, you don't even almost have to sit on it. It's like almost like the toilet has come up.
Well, yeah, they use a riser. But this is what I saw for all the years I worked in geriatrics. A senior would get to a chair and they would literally do this, collapse down. And they'd collapse down because they didn't have the strength, the eccentric strength to lower themselves, but they also didn't have good neurological control. And so it's so important, even if you have a chair with handles, that you practice getting in and out of that chair all the time. The chairs are, in sitting is one of the most dangerous things. See, like this is the chair, it's uncomfortable for me to sit in. So I'm gonna sit cross-legged because it's uncomfortable, I'm not used to it. I prefer sitting on the floor or on a ball. But you know, you're really hurting your immune system because you know most of your lymph nodes are in your chest and your groin region. And if you think about sitting and doing this all day typing, there's no movement here and there's no movement here. So you're really getting very congested. And so you want to get out of that compromised position as often as you can. And that's why I've always recommended a standing desk. And you don't have to use a standing desk all day. Like I have a hand crank on my standing desk, so I'll stand for X amount of time, then I'll lower it, and then I'll sit on an exercise ball. Then I'll lower it all the way to the floor, and then I'll literally be on the floor in this squatting position like this and doing work. So you're changing your posture all the time. But think about it. Why, AJ, are all chairs about the same height? I mean, who designed that? What if I was to design a chair that I shaved off 5 inches of the chair and we created a new society? Would people's strength be better? Yeah. Would their flexibility be better? Yeah. So just because somebody created this device doesn't necessarily mean that we should let our body conform to it.
I agree. Chris says, I am used to standing up all day and moving at my teaching job. Now I'm teaching at home on the computer all day. What kind of chair should I be using, or just a ball chair?
Yeah, just get an exercise ball like this. And you don't want to get the stands. They sell these round stands that you put the ball in so it doesn't move away. You don't want that because that's what's hurting you. What you do want is you just want the ball. And if you're not used to it, don't blow the ball all the way up because you want the surface area to be soft, because then it's going to squish on the floor and give you better balance. As you get fitter, you can blow the ball up. It'll have less surface area and it's more unstable. But I'll show you a couple exercises. Once when you're sitting on the ball, gently bouncing is going to be really good for you. Gently just moving your arms and going like this as you're sitting, just every half hour. And then also get on, stand, put your foot on the ball and just go forward and back. And this is a great way to stretch out your hamstring, and you're getting balance training and your glutes are firing to stabilize you. The other thing you can do with the ball is just put it against the wall. And when I'm here, I can just do squats with it. I'm leaning into the wall, but I'm doing these squats. And all I'm doing is just sneaking this in every half hour throughout the day. And at the end of the day, you snuck in the equivalent of an hour or 2 hours worth of workout. So it doesn't have to be all at once.
Great. A lot of people are asking what size your ball is.
Well, for somebody shorter, they make a 55, a 65, and a 75. Most people will do really well on the 65 centimeter. The 55 is a little small, but if you were like 5 foot, that'd be fine. The 75 is more for people who are basketball size, really tall people. But you also can change it by how much air you put into.
Right. I love those just for stretching as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. You can do, one of the best stretches in the world, when I've worked with professional, whether it's a professional athlete or a professional musician, especially professional drummers, they're kind of hyperkyphosis forward and doing this all the time. So I put them on the ball here, and then I have them hyperextend back throughout the day. So they're constantly hyperextending. And I just came back, I was teaching at a dentist conference. And one of the things that I was telling the dentist is you're in this forward flexion all day long. You need to get a ball so you can hyperextend throughout the day, even just in between patients.
You're right. And that's what I need too, because I'm a hunch forward person. I do a lot of yin yoga, and so I have the ball. I just sometimes don't use it. So let's see. John asks, can you get the benefits without rebounding without jumping, like just light workout and marching?
Well, you can get benefits. You're not going to get the same benefits as a rebounder, but just getting your lymphatic system going like this, walking in place works good, and just little hopping like this and moving your arms, it helps. It's not going to be the same cellular, what we call cellular size as a rebounder, but that's okay if you don't have a rebounder. So yeah, just getting, I still think that, look at this. I wouldn't have made a video on this if I didn't think it was one of the greatest things in the world to do is jumping rope, because once you cut it in half, that makes all the difference. When I think you've seen the video of me working with Ellen DeGeneres, and Ellen says on the video, he got sneaky and he cut it in half, and then she started jump roping really quick. You saw that? Yeah, now she can jump rope really fast, get her heart rate up. She can get all this footwork patterns. All we did was be smart and cut it in half. So jumping rope is one of the best things in the world for you.
Thomas Allen, our dear friend from California, Balsamic, has a question. And before I ask it, I just want to say, if you guys don't follow me on Instagram, I posted yesterday for dinner, I had a stoked sweet potato with the pineapple, the island pineapple vinegar. If you haven't tried that one, it is so good. And he asks, do you recommend the device that raises the desktop computer so that you stand up at your desk?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Like they have, yeah, Teresa has one here. You just click a button and then it raises up. Sure. Now, people who can't afford that, you can just use boxes, same thing. I have people just put their computer on their kitchen table too. So there's many ways, but yeah. And Thomas, I love your vinegars and I recommend them to all my clients. So thank you for being there and getting all that great product out to people, because, it really makes a difference what you've done, because so many people, it's all about, I've always taught forever, it's about the sauces and seasonings.
Absolutely.
Your products have made it so lots of people can enjoy it. So thank you so much.
Yeah, that is so true. Thank you for saying that, JP. Dina said that she had a desk job and she used a rider under her desk so she could casually bike while working.
Oh, sure. Well, you guys have seen Dr. Greger, right? He's walking, 15 or 16 miles probably a day doing that. And Teresa here has a treadmill, the one that I let her borrow mine, because I have one called a Rebel Desk. That's a hand crank. And then it has a treadmill that goes a half a mile to 2 miles an hour. And so you can walk super slow. And the bicycling one is really good too. We're just trying to sneak more movement in. It's not that sitting is bad or any posture, within reason, isn't bad. It's just prolonged. It's kind of like eating, one fruit all the time and never getting a variety. It's like we need to have a little bit of variety in our movement. We just don't want to be locked into this pose all day long. That's all.
Of course. Louise, when you were talking about getting up off the floor, she says, is it ever too late to develop those muscles again to get up off the floor? Since I had hip surgery in 2012, I find I can't squat low anymore or get right up off the floor.
Oh, sure. Well, that's going to happen. I've worked with so many people who've had hip problems and knee problems, and it just takes time. You just have to work with a physical therapist or somebody who's trained to show you how to go about incrementally, kind of going up the stairs metaphorically, slowly. And the other thing is you have to remember, you have to maximize your nutrition. You have to be very well hydrated. That fascia, that tissue gets basically, it's almost like it gets, not really, but it's almost like it gets very, very congested or tight or knots in it. And it's the foam rolling and using exercise, the ball, like a tennis ball, to start opening up that fascia and releasing it. And so that's why massage is really important. I'm very big into getting my clients to get massages. I use different tools for my clients to help open up that fascia. And I have all my clients foam roll. And it's one of the things when I taught in Chicago last year at my conference, I always joked, I said, I've made a lot of predictions and they've all come true. And I said, one of the predictions I've been making for years is how important body work is to humanity. And it's so important because never before in history have we seen people sitting as much as we do. If you think about it, you're lying in bed for 8 hours, no movement. Then you eat breakfast in a chair, no movement. Then you drive your car to work, no movement. Then you take an elevator up to your office, no movement. Then you get back in the chair for 8 hours. And then all you do is repeat that. Never before in history has the human body experienced this type of compromised positions, and it's wreaking havoc on people.
That's terrific. Gina says, these are great questions. Chef AJ, would John Pierre come on FFOF regularly? He's fantastic. I don't know if he'll come regularly, but I'm certainly going to invite him to be a guest one time. And I just posted the link to that in case you want to know what that is. So SMD says, as we age, we lose collagen. How can we increase it or keep it? And we did have a plant-based dermatologist on the other day, and I believe she was against taking collagen, internally.
It is from animals, right? So that was the main thing. But vitamin C is super, super important for collagen production. And that is it's a really good question. I'd be interested to see what the dermatologists recommended, because there are different types of amino acids that we can get in our food and vitamin C that are so important. Now that brings up a really interesting question, because then we get into proteins. And one thing you need to understand is that sure, as we age, we might lose the production of it. But one of the things we lose also when we age is many people, the hydrochloric acid and digestive enzymes don't work as well. And when they don't work as well, they don't break apart proteins as efficiently. And I always say that nutrition should be simple, but to give you like a quick example of how complicated it could be is if somebody had, let's say, a zinc deficiency. One of the symptoms of zinc deficiency is the inability to smell. And it often happens with the elderly. When you can't smell your food, your digestive enzymes are not really being secreted, because one of the ideas is when olfactory nerves, when we can smell, it tells our brain to release digestive enzymes so we can start digesting. If you can't smell due to a zinc deficiency or maybe allergies, or even in the case of the coronavirus, then your body might not be as efficient at breaking apart food. And that's why you have to get used to chewing very, very well. And making sure, one of the things I'm a big proponent in is making sure you're getting enough proteins in your diet. So beans, peas, and lentils, legumes. And if you can't eat that, some sort of super seeds, super grains, something that has these amino acids that help build our body. Because remember, proteins are builders. They build and repair tissue. And so that's one of the things. I didn't get the opportunity to listen to the dermatologist, but I'd be fascinated to hear what he or she had to say about
that. She was really good, and people said, oh, you've got to have her back. She was terrific. So we have a question from Joanne. How do you feel about weightlifting versus cardio in terms of losing weight? Which is better? I think the diet is better.
Exactly. Well, first of all, I don't focus on weight loss, so it's going to happen naturally. So I never focus on weight loss. It's just a byproduct of it. And most of your weight loss, if you want to say it, is going to come, as AJ said, from your diet. If you take a tablespoon of oil, the calories in there, about 14 grams of fat, what are we talking about, 125 calories? You could eat 3 pounds of vegetables to get that. So it's so easy to take a tablespoon of oil and put it on your salad or put it in your rice, and that's a massive amount of calories. It's so funny, AJ, because the way that we eat, it's so filling. I don't know how anyone could overeat. I have to intentionally eat high calorie foods because I'm so full on vegetables. We teach people to sequence their meals, right? To eat the starch or something last. I almost have to eat my starch first before I get too full on the vegetables. So you're going to lose body fat eventually following, the ultimate weight loss program that we created. You'll eventually lose it. In terms of exercise, there's a benefit to strength training and there's a benefit to aerobic exercise, but there is a way to combine both of them to do circuit training where you're doing one exercise after another, you're keeping your heart rate up and you're not taking those 2 to 3 minutes breaks in between. Who I use the 2 to 3 minute break in between is somebody who needs to develop a massive amount of strength. I want that ATP to regenerate. I want them to get fully rested for that 2 to 3 minutes and then go back to it. But for most of us in life, wanting to be healthy, or in your case, wanting to so-called lose weight, circuit training is wonderful.
Great. Kathy wants to know, what do you think of red light therapy for exercise, performance, and recovery?
I don't know what red light therapy is.
Okay, well, good. And Monica wanted to know what brought you to whole food plant-based. You were about 17, right?
Yeah, so I was in high school. And what's funny is the 2 oral reports that I did in high school senior year were animal rights. And then the other one is women's rights. So my first book, The Pillars of Health, that I did with my assistant Marina, was all based on love and compassion and plant-based eating and movement. And then my second book, Strong, Savvy, Safe, that I did with Marina, is all based on women's self-defense, safety, and empowerment. So the whole reason that I became plant-based, or vegan, I should say, is because of I didn't want to hurt anything. So I became vegan for ethical reasons like AJ. We didn't want to cause harm anywhere. So we didn't want to harm people, we didn't want to harm the environment, and we didn't want to harm animals. And, I have 20 animals. And if you can imagine how many water bowls that we have throughout the day, and we have different plants growing, and we get these microscopic tiny little fruit flies that go in there and they stretch out and they look like they're dead. And all day long, literally all day long, I take a little tiny piece of a paper towel and I suck them up and I put it on the counter and I come back and they're gone. So to me, all expressions of life are sacred. And it doesn't matter if it's that little almost microscopic insect or if it's a majestic, whale or an endangered wolf, they're all equal to me. So I became vegan for ethical reasons.
Yep, same here. Lana says, I'm on the fence about eating this way because I have adrenal chronic fatigue issues. I've been told to eat meat to support my body until it heals and then to transition. Any guidance? Thanks.
Well, Chinese medicine, one of the challenges with Chinese medicine is when they're talking about yin and yang and different energies, meat is very expansive, masculine energy, and people who have had adrenal exhaustion, and I've worked with a ton of them, and people who have adrenal exhaustion need rest and nourishment. And 2 of the most nourishing things for the adrenal gland are ascorbic acid, vitamin C, and pantothenic acid, a B vitamin. And there's different herbs and ashwagandha and different things. But the more antioxidants and more nourishment and hydration that you can put in your diet from plant-based foods, the more that they're going to support your adrenal glands. But maybe more important of that, you need to find the origin of what the adrenal exhaustion was caused from. And that's critical. And I can assure you that eating a dead, tortured animal on a karmic level and a psychological level is not nourishing the body. It's very harmful. So one of the challenges with some of the Chinese medicine is they're always getting people of adrenal exhaustion to be taking glandulars and eating animal products, which I 100% disagree with, as do all the vegan physicians. So I would work on supporting your adrenals with good foods, and I'd work on stress reduction. One of the things that I use all the time are different essential oils. And one of the best essential oils, and it's on our site, it's livingwithharmony.org. We don't sell them, but we just have an affiliate link, but is this one called Serenity. And this is one of the most important essential oils to relax you. So lavender or Serenity are 2 that invoke a sense of calmness and ease in people. And 2 of my favorites are Motivate, which you could almost say would be like a stimulating oil, and then Serenity, which is very relaxing. So you may want to experiment with that. You can also write me I'm sure AJ will put my website and all that down, and you can just email me and I'd be glad to try to help you too.
Absolutely. I've been posting links throughout, but there's also what we call the show notes, which they can see now and immediately. So Dina says, if a person goes on vacation and indulges, that anticipated weight gain can show up a month later, not necessarily a few days or the next week, right? I mean, I don't know like when weight gain shows up, but I can't imagine it takes a whole month to show up.
Well, first of all, that's a great question, but I'll tell you something so we can go to the advanced level of this. It's not even the so-called weight gain that's hurt you. It's you've shifted in a down gear. You've gone down now. Now what happens, it's like committing a crime. When you steal once, it gets easier to steal again and again and again. And then that becomes an addiction. And that's why with what we do with Ultimate Weight Loss is we want people to constantly raise their standards, and we want them to have a calm, stable brain. When you so-called cheat, you get a dopamine blast not only before you cheat because you're anticipating that high. That's one of the things that dopamine does. It gives us a blast by anticipating. But then when we eat that food and then we get used to that stimulation and we want it again and again and again. It's like when you give a child a sucker, a candy, they want it again and again. But if you raise a child with just Brussels sprouts as the treat, they can't wait to get that. I think, AJ, you've talked about maybe it was a Dr. Furman's son or Dr. Goldhammer's son. Their treat might have been vegetables. So yeah, the danger of going off and overindulging isn't necessarily the damage the food's doing to you now or the weight gain. It's the psychological damage.
Yeah, and Dr. Lyle talks about in the terms of your internal audience, they're either impressed with you or they're disgusted with you. So how do you want to feel?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Monica wants to know what foods have zinc.
Well, mainly if you're looking at your grains, and if you eat nuts and seeds, yeah, you can have that too. Now, zinc is an interesting thing because though it's important for men and it's important for prostate, it's also important for women and for growth, but it is for the immune system. And we don't need a lot of it. And as a matter of fact, we don't want to be over supplementing because excess zinc can actually cause the immune system to be hurt. And that's why one of the dangers now is there's been a lot of talk with COVID, people should have more zinc, but meat eaters are already getting a ton of zinc, and vegans generally get enough zinc if they're eating whole grains and some nuts and seeds. So as long as you're doing that, you're probably okay. If your wounds aren't healing, you get, maybe more prone to infections. You can always talk to your physician about if they think you need a zinc supplement. Personally, I think a lot of the supplements out there that are made for vegans have a little zinc in them, and I think that's kind of a good thing, especially if you're not eating a wide variety of foods or whole grains.
Great. Vegan Bell wants to know how much exercise is too much exercise?
Well, that's a great question, but it's a hard to answer because I don't know what you call exercise. So somebody could say I'm doing 5 hours of yoga a day. As long as they're not overstretching themselves, that's not probably going to be too much. But if you said you were doing 5 hours of endurance training or Tabata training or high intensity training, that could be too much. I don't think that we should I don't like the term exercise. I like the term movement. And I think it's just important, like in your diet, that you're getting movement in throughout the day. So it's like eating throughout the day, and you're getting a variety of movement. Because my question, when I work with, say, a professional athlete, I'm concerned whatever their strength is, they're really good at, we don't ever focus on that. I focus on their weakness. So I think, AJ, that I was working with one of the world sumo champions, that he was actually the world sumo champion and judo champion. And one of the things that I did with him is after 10 minutes of working out with me, he's a really great guy, and he's from Egypt. And he talked in a really low voice, and he goes, I worked out with JP. He goes, I've been working out since I've been 5, but he killed me after 10 minutes. And the reason why is because I had him do things that he wasn't used to. That's why. So he may be the world champion in sumo, but I'm having him do things he's not used to. So for the question, if you're my client, I'm working with you, I'm looking at what you're good at, and then I'm looking at what you're not so good at, and I'm going to try to focus a little bit more on your weaknesses. So it's a great question, but it's a little hard to answer.
Great. Couple of questions on how do you feel about vibration machines?
Oh, right. Vibration machines are great for bone density. Wonderful. They're expensive. They're a couple $1,000s, for the machines, I think, but they're really good for seniors or people of osteopenia that have a little trouble walking already and getting exercise. It is a great way to stimulate bones The only thing I don't like is I don't like people just to rely on them if they have the ability to ambulate or walk or move. I like them to add that as, it's kind of like taking a multiple vitamin. You don't get to take a multiple vitamin or zinc or something, DHA or whatever it is, vitamin D, and then just forget the rest of your healthy living.
Great.
So they should be in conjunction.
Linda Middlesworth wants to know, do men who lift weight need vegan protein powder? Because I had Robert Cheek on a few weeks ago. He said no.
Yeah, well, younger men don't, but where we run into a problem is older men that have digestive issues. They might not need to have a protein powder, but they'd really better be loading up on legumes and eat enough legumes or take like chlorella or something, because as you get older, it's just like B12, the intrinsic factor. That's when people get over 50, vegan or not, they need to take B12 because they're just not able to absorb the B12. It's the same thing as people get older. They don't digest food very well, and they can often see food passing through when they go to the bathroom, huge chunks of food, and that's all the nutrients in there are not absorbed. So it's not necessary, but I do use them for my clients, especially as they get older, if they're not willing to eat enough legumes or other kind of what we call super seeds.
Great. Last question. So I generally don't do consults except for the people that are our joint clients in the Ultimate Weight Loss Mastery Program. But during the sheltering, people were freaking out. So I put it back on my website. In 6 weeks, I've had 2 people. I'm almost positive that as soon as this, I don't know when the pandemic itself is going to end, but when, the heightened part where the sheltering, there's going to be a lot of activity with people that have regained weight, and then they're going to want to talk to me, and I'm sure they're going to want to talk to you. The link's been posted for people to get a private session. I know you say that people that don't love that, the people that love themselves don't hurt themselves, but at the same time, some of these people that I see gaining some or all of their weight back, they seem to be people that they do love themselves. But I think that sometimes the pleasure trap is just such a strong force that people get caught in it. So I guess my question is how do we reach these people like before they gain all their weight back? Because to me, if somebody is overweight and they stay overweight, it's, maintaining their weight. But I see when people lose and regain, that seems almost more devastating than when they were overweight. I don't know if my question makes sense, but are you getting anything out of what I'm saying? I'm sorry.
I'm not sure what the question is, but it is not only physically unhealthy for you to gain and lose, but worse than that, it's devastatingly emotional damaging, because what your body, your brain, and your psyche is saying, see, I can't do it, because you're like a roller coaster. It's bipolar. It's a high and a low. And so one of the other reasons I don't have my clients focus on weight. If you just stop focusing on weight loss and focus on getting healthier, you're not going to have that problem. But AJ, I wasn't sure what your question was.
I guess my question is how do we stop it before they hit that? Nobody's perfect. People sometimes have a lick, a bite, a taste, a slip, or even a relapse. How do we get them back in the game before they have regained all their weight back? See, because once they're in that, I don't know if it's the ego trap, it's like they're almost, it seems like we've lost them for a time.
Well, I mean, one of the things that's why I work with clients. I mean, one of the things that I do, it's like with Teresa Passy, I had her text me every single day. And so you have to be accountable to somebody. You have to have a buddy, you have to have an accountability partner, you have to have a coach. And, when I'm working with clients, I have to keep them accountable. And it's kind of like, like we talked about when you go on vacations or something, I'd have a talk with you beforehand. I'd say, hey, AJ, make sure just because they're having these vegan cakes or vegan fruit things all day long, you're not overindulging. You have to have somebody there to help educate you and guide you and be there for you, a mentor. And so that's one of the things I do. We have lots of people in our movement that do it. But yeah, you have to do that because, as I said, once you slip up once, it just makes it easier to do it again. It's like, AJ, that you very well could eat whatever you want and it's not going to affect your weight, but eventually you're going to get hooked in that pleasure trap and you're going to want to have a handful of nuts a little bit more often. You're going to want to have that chocolate smoothie more than once. So that's one of the reasons why it's not a good idea to deviate. If you have the mindset that you can't, like I could go eat whatever, I could go eat some vegan hot dogs or something that I normally wouldn't eat and it doesn't do anything for me. I'd eat whatever it is and say, okay, then I'm done eating it. But if you have an addictive personality, you can't afford that. It's like somebody who's an alcoholic. You don't give them a sip of wine and say, hey, it's only a sip. That's enough to trigger their brain and send them on a downward spiral. So you have to be on the straight and narrow.
Robert Cheek says hello from Karen and Robert.
Oh, they're great. Now
Yep.
there's a legend right there. There's a guy that needs to be acknowledged more and more, because what he's done for especially vegan bodybuilding, he did that really before most anybody else. And he's a perfect example of somebody who used vegan proteins and then stopped forever for using them, and he still maintained his size and strength, and he's one big dude right now. So
Wow.
he's a good example of that. But remember, again, Robert is young. As people get older, Robert could eat a lot of food. So as people get older, they need to eat those legumes and stuff. And if they're not, then they need to be concerned about protein, though, because protein is designed to build your bones and muscle tissue, your hormones. It's very important for your system. And as people get older, we see a lot of studies that they're lower in amino acids if they're not eating enough of those legumes and power seeds.
Nice. Gina says, how did you guys meet and partner? We met in March of 2010, a little over 10 years ago, in Austin, Texas, at Rip Esselstyn and Whole Foods immersion program. And that's where we met.
Yeah, so we taught actually at Rip's first event.
Mm-hmm.
That was a lot of fun teaching back then.
Yeah, that was
what's interesting is many of obviously the plant stock, and then mastering diabetes, Adam Sudd. And Adam is such an amazing guy. And Adam he tells the story that, he was really overweight and he had drug and alcohol addictions. And I just met him there. I didn't know who he was. And I just kind of took him on the side and spent all this time with him and gave him some video recommendations. 7 years later, he writes me and he tells me he's straight and sober. And now he's teaching for Rip Esselstyn. He's part of the Mastering Diabetes group. It is just amazing. It just goes to show you, we never know who we're influencing. And that's why it's so important, as I said in the beginning, to extend yourself and be kind to people, spend time with them, try to help people out, because you never know what they're going to do with it. It's kind of like AJ and I, when I tried to encourage AJ to exercise, she would fight me all the time. And then eventually she started exercising, and now she's quite the yogi.
Thank you for that. Yes, very, very good. Anything else? Any thoughts you want to leave the viewers?
Well, first of all, I do want to thank you for what you're doing, because you're doing such a great service. You're out there 2 or 3 times a day producing all this wonderful work and bringing attention to all these vegan practitioners, and you're helping alleviate some stress. So thank you for that. And of course, all the pioneering work that you've done over the years. And I've loved that we've done our program together and we still continue to work together. So thank you for that opportunity.
Yeah, we got another one coming out. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say anything yet, but we got 2.0 UWL. It's in the works, not quite done, but
right.
Yeah.
But I just want to say, make sure that you follow us on Instagram, because livingwithharmony.org is our sanctuary site, but we're on Instagram, and that's about the only thing that I use to keep people really up to date on what we do. So it's Living with Harmony is on Instagram. We're on Facebook too. And again, we're trying to open up an animal sanctuary in Colorado and a retreat center, so we can run retreats all the time. We work with Project Child Save to help rescue kids in trafficking. We run the Boulder, Colorado Pet Pantry. We help do that and help the low income and poor people so they can afford food for their animals. So there's lots of good stuff on our site. So be sure to check it out. And then this month, starting next Saturday, I'm doing 5 Zoom calls that you can sign up for. And it's dealing with stress and trauma during the pandemic, and also how to have preparedness, how to be prepared, what foods to store, what supplements, what's emergency preparedness things. And we're going to talk about exercise and then mindfulness.
I've been posting the link the whole time, but I just posted it again. So thank you for all the good that you do in the world and for inspiring others to do good as well.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. And thank you guys for watching. And I hope you'll come back tomorrow when I have a guest I've never interviewed. I have been asking him for years, but I think with the shutdowns, some doctors have a little bit more time. So none other than past president of the American College of Cardiology, Dr. Kim Williams, will be at noon. The times are always Pacific time. And at 2 p.m., we have another cooking demo, this time with Chef Ramses Bravo. So please come back tomorrow. Thanks again, JP. I hope you stay well and safe, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, everybody.